The giant space station looked like a metal city floating among the stars. Ships from hundreds of different worlds came and went from its docking bays. Inside the main hall, strange beings sat in rows of seats that went up high like a mountain. Some had many arms, others glowed with soft light, and a few looked like walking crystals. Commander Lee Taman walked into the hall wearing his blue Earth uniform. His black hair was cut short and neat. Behind him came Ambassador Park Minji in her formal dress and Colonel Kim Do-yoon in his green military outfit. The three humans looked very small next to the giant alien beings around them. Taman had been to many places in space, but this Galactic Council station still made him feel amazed. The ceiling was made of clear glass that showed the stars outside. The walls had strange writing in languages he could not read. The air smelled different here, like metal and ozone. "Stay close," Minji whispered to the other two. She had studied alien customs for years, but this was her first time meeting so many different species at once. Her hands shook a little, but she kept her face calm. At the front of the hall stood the biggest creature Taman had ever seen. It looked like a walking mountain made of purple crystal. Its body caught the light and threw rainbows on the walls. When it moved, the crystals on its body made a sound like wind chimes. This was Overlord Thexmore of the Vorthak hegemony. "The humans have arrived," Thexmore said. Its voice was deep and seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We can begin." The other aliens turned to look at the three humans. Some made clicking sounds. Others whispered in languages that sounded like music or static. Taman felt like a child in a room full of adults. "Commander Lee Taman," Thexmore continued, "you speak for the planet called Earth?" "I do," Taman said. His voice sounded small in the huge hall. "Good. Then listen well to what I tell you today." Thexmore raised one of its crystal arms. The lights in the hall went dim. Above them, pictures appeared in the air showing different planets and star systems. "For 3,000 years, the Vorthak hegemony has kept peace in this galaxy," Thexmore said. "We have done this through a simple system. Every species that joins the galactic community must pay tribute to us." The pictures showed huge ships flying through space. They were bigger than Earth's largest cities, and there were thousands of them. "The tribute is not much to ask," Thexmore said, but its voice made it sound like this was not really a choice. 40% of your military ships and weapons, 60% of your rare metals and crystals, and 100,000 of your people to come work for us and learn our ways." Colonel Do-hyun's jaw got tight when he heard the numbers. Ambassador Minji wrote notes on her tablet, but her fingers moved too fast and made mistakes. "Every species in this hall has paid this tribute," Thexmore continued. "The Zephyrians with their golden ships, the Etherians with their floating cities, the rock people of Granite Prime. All of them chose wisdom over pride." The crystal being pointed to different sections of the hall as it spoke. The aliens sitting there looked down at the floor. Some seemed sad or angry, but none of them spoke up. "But what happens to those who refuse?" asked a voice from the crowd. It was a small blue creature with big eyes. Thexmore's crystal body flashed with red light. "Those who refuse are no longer with us. The crystalline collective tried to fight us. Their planets are now empty rocks floating in space. The warrior clans of Draxon thought their strength could save them. Their suns went dark 200 years ago. Pictures appeared showing dead planets. Cities turned to glass. Oceans dried up. Empty space where stars used to be." The humans could see that these were not old pictures. The destruction was complete and terrible. "This is the choice before humanity," Thexmore said, looking right at Taman. "Join the civilized galaxy and pay your share, or choose the path of the extinct species." The hall became very quiet. Even the sound of air moving through the vents seemed loud. Ambassador Minji stood up. "How long do we have to decide?" 30 standard galactic days, Thexmore replied. "This is more time than we usually give new species. Consider it a gift." "And if we need more time?" Colonel Do-hyun asked. The red light flashed in Thexmore's crystal body again. "There is no more time. 30 days to choose life or death for your entire species." On her tablet, Minji was doing quick math. 40% of Earth's military would mean giving up most of their defense ships. 60% of rare metals would crash their economy. And 100,000 people. That was like giving up a whole city. "We understand," Taman said carefully. "We will take your message back to our leaders." "See that you do," Thexmore said. "And remember, Commander, we are not cruel. We do not wish to destroy humanity, but we will if you force us to choose between your pride and galactic peace." The crystal being sat back down, making the whole platform shake. The other aliens began to leave the hall in groups. Some looked at the humans with pity. Others seemed curious to see what these newcomers would choose. As the humans walked back to their ship, Taman felt the weight of the message on his shoulders. Behind them, the great hall emptied out, but he could still feel Thexmore watching them go. Captain Yu Jisoo was waiting for them on the bridge of their ship, Soul's Pride. She was young for a ship captain, but she had proven herself in the colony wars. Her dark eyes looked worried as she watched the three return. "How bad is it?" she asked. Taman sat down heavily in his chair. "Bad may be worse than bad. They want 40% of our fleet," Colonel Do-hyun said, "plus most of our metals and 100,000 people." "And if we say no?" Jisoo asked, though she could guess the answer. "Then Earth joins the list of dead worlds," Minji said quietly. Jisoo looked out at the giant space station. She could see the massive Vorthak ships docked there. Each one was bigger than anything Earth had ever built. 30 days, Taman said. "That's how long humanity has to choose." The ship's communication system came to life. "Captain Jisoo, we have clearance to leave." "Take us home," Jisoo ordered. "Fast as you can." As Soul's Pride flew away from the station, the three humans sat in silence. Each of them was thinking the same thing. How do you tell an entire planet that they have 30 days to choose between slavery and death? The message from the Galactic Council reached Earth 3 days later. Captain Yu Jisoo stood in the communication center in Seoul, watching as the recording played on screens around the world. People stopped what they were doing to listen. In New York, London, Tokyo, and every other major city, crowds gathered around public screens. Commander Taman's voice was calm as he explained what the Vorthak wanted. But his words hit like thunder. 40% of Earth's military, 60% of their rare metals, 100,000 people to be taken away from their families. Prime Minister Choi Ji-hwan sat in his office watching the same message. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes, but today he looked older than his 70 years. His secretary, a young woman named Kim Yeji, brought him cup after cup of tea that he forgot to drink. "Get me Admiral Song Hyuk," he said. "Get me the defense ministers from every nation. Get me everyone who matters. We need to meet now." Within 6 hours, leaders from around the world were sitting in the emergency meeting room, deep under the government building in Seoul. The room had no windows and thick walls that could survive a nuclear bomb. Today it felt like a tomb. Admiral Song Hyuk was a big man with scars on his hands from his time as a young sailor. He had fought in 3 wars and thought he knew what impossible odds looked like. But this was different. "Let me give you the numbers," he said, standing in front of a huge screen. Earth has about 50,000 military ships of all sizes. Most of them are small patrol boats or transport ships. We have maybe 5,000 real warships. The screen showed pictures of Earth's fleet. They looked proud and strong, but everyone in the room was doing the math. "The Vorthak have over 2 million ships," Admiral Song continued. "Their smallest warship is bigger than our largest battleship. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. In a straight fight, we would last maybe a few hours." Dr. Nam Soo-young stood up next. She was the head of the Xenological Studies Department and had spent her life studying alien species. She was small and quiet, but when she spoke, everyone listened. "I have studied every species that ever refused to pay the Vorthak tribute," she said. 237 different civilizations over the past 3,000 years. All of them are gone now. She pressed a button and the screen filled with pictures of dead worlds, empty cities, cracked planets, dark space where stars used to shine. The Zephyrian Empire had a fleet of 3 million ships. They were wiped out in 6 months. The Crystalline Collective could turn their bodies into living weapons. It didn't matter. The warrior clans of Draxon were famous across the galaxy for never losing a battle. They lost the last one. Defense Minister Park Hyun-woo, a former general, slammed his hand on the table. "So we're supposed to just give up? Hand over our ships and our people and hope they don't ask for more later?" "That's exactly what every other species did," Dr. Nam said. "And most of them are still alive." "Living as slaves," said General Han Woo-jin. He was the commander of the Terran Marines, the toughest soldiers Earth had ever produced. "I've read the reports from other species. The cultural exchange workers never come home. Their militaries become puppets for the Vorthak. Their governments do whatever they're told. Prime Minister Choi looked around the table at all the faces, young and old, military and civilian, men and women from every continent on Earth. All of them were thinking the same thing. How do you choose between death and slavery? There might be another option, said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at Director Lee Hanna from the Intelligence Division. She was a thin woman with sharp eyes who rarely spoke in meetings. When she did, people paid attention. For the past 2 years, we've been intercepting Vorthak communications, she said. Not their military channels, but their civilian networks, trade routes, supply lines, technical manuals. She walked to the front of the room and took control of the screen. New pictures appeared showing detailed diagrams of Vorthak ships and weapons. What we found is interesting. Their technology is very advanced, but it's also very old. They've been using the same ship designs for over 1,000 years, the same weapons, the same tactics. Admiral Song leaned forward. What are you saying? I'm saying they've gotten lazy, Lee Hanna replied. When you win every fight for 3,000 years, you stop trying to improve. Their ships are powerful, but they're not built to fight an enemy that adapts quickly. Engineer Kang Minho stood up. He was young, maybe 30 years old, but he had designed half of Earth's newest warships. His hands were always moving when he talked, like he was building something in the air. I've been looking at their ship designs, he said. Director Lee is right. Their hulls are thick, but they use old-style armor. Their weapons are powerful, but they fire slowly. Their shields cover everything, but they take a lot of energy to maintain. What does that mean for us? Asked the Prime Minister. Kang Minho smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It means we can hurt them. Maybe not beat them, but hurt them badly enough that they'll think twice about fighting us. General Han stood up. Even if we can hurt them, they still have 2 million ships. We can't build enough weapons in 30 days to fight that kind of fleet. We don't have to fight all of them at once, said Colonel Kim Do-yun, who had been quiet until now. We just have to make the cost too high for them to want to pay. The room fell silent as everyone thought about this. Dr. Nam shook her head. Every species thought they could make the Vorthak pay a high price. It didn't work for any of them. Because they fought alone, Colonel Kim said. What if we don't fight alone? Director Lee Hanna nodded slowly. The intelligence reports show something else interesting. Most of the species paying tribute are not happy about it. They have to give up almost everything they produce. Their people live in poverty while the Vorthak live like kings. You're talking about starting a rebellion, said Prime Minister Choi. Getting other species to fight with us against the Vorthak. I'm talking about giving them hope, Lee Hanna replied. For 3,000 years, every species has bent the knee because they thought they had no choice. What if we show them there is another choice? Admiral Song was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. It's suicide. But so is saying yes to the tribute. And so is saying no and fighting alone. Engineer Kang Minho was drawing diagrams on his tablet. If we're going to do this, we need to start building now. New ships, new weapons, new everything. We have 30 days to prepare for a war that will decide if humanity survives. Can we do it? Asked the Prime Minister. Can we really build enough in 30 days to make a difference? Kang Minho looked up from his tablet. If every factory on Earth works day and night, if every person with engineering knowledge helps, if we use every resource we have and don't worry about the cost, maybe. General Han stood up straight. My Marines are ready to fight. Win or lose, we'll fight. One by one, the people around the table stood up. The defense ministers, the admirals, the scientists, the engineers. All of them choosing the same impossible path. Prime Minister Choi was the last to stand. Then it's decided. Humanity chooses to fight. Outside the meeting room, the sun was setting over Seoul. In 30 days, the Vorthak would want their answer. Earth had 30 days to prepare for a war they couldn't win. But as the leaders left the room to begin the greatest military buildup in human history, none of them looked afraid. They looked determined. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone was going to tell the Vorthak no. 30 days passed like a dream. On Earth, every factory worked day and night. The sky above major cities glowed orange from the heat of foundries and shipyards. Engineer Kang Minho had not slept more than 3 hours at a time since the meeting in Seoul. His teams built new ships faster than anyone thought possible. Factory Supervisor Oh Kyung-min stood in the main assembly hall of the Beijing shipworks, watching workers put together their 1,000th new warship. The ship was small and fast, built for hit-and-run attacks rather than standing battles. Every piece was designed to be simple to build and deadly to use. How many more? Kang Minho asked, walking up beside him. The young engineer looked tired but excited. 200 more today, Oh Kyung-min replied. The Shanghai yards finished 300 yesterday. Mumbai completed 250. All over the world were building ships. The numbers were incredible. In 30 days, Earth had built more warships than they had possessed in the past 50 years. But everyone knew it might not be enough. Now Ambassador Park Min-ji stood once again in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council Station. The same alien beings filled the seats, but this time the atmosphere was different. News of Earth's massive building program had spread through the galaxy. Some species whispered excitedly. Others looked afraid. Commander Lee Taemin and Colonel Kim Do-hyun stood beside her wearing their dress uniforms. They looked calm, but their hearts were beating fast. Behind them, hidden in their ship's databanks, were the secret messages they had sent to dozens of species over the past month. Overlord Thexmore rose from its crystal throne. The purple light from its body cast strange shadows on the walls. The time for choosing has come, it announced. Has humanity decided to join the civilized galaxy? The hall became silent. Every alien being leaned forward to hear the answer that would decide humanity's fate. Ambassador Min-ji activated her portable holographic display. Instead of surrender documents, the display showed columns of numbers. Production figures. Ship counts. Weapon specifications. Overlord Thexmore, she began, her voice clear and strong. In the 30 days you gave us to consider your generous offer, humanity has been busy. The numbers appeared in the air above the hall. Even the aliens who couldn't read human writing could understand what they meant. The production figures were enormous. We have built 200,000 new warships, Min-ji continued. We have trained 50 million new pilots and crew members. We have developed 17 new weapon systems designed specifically to fight Vorthak technology. A sound like static electricity filled the hall as alien beings made sounds of surprise. Overlord Thexmore's crystal body flashed with red warning lights. And we have sent a message to every species in this galaxy, Min-ji said, looking directly at the Vorthak overlord. A message about choice, about freedom, about saying no to bullies. The display changed to show a map of the galaxy. Dozens of star systems were marked with pulsing lights. Our answer to your tribute demand is simple, Ambassador Min-ji said. Come and take it. The hall erupted in chaos. Some alien beings made sounds of joy. Others hissed or clicked in fear. Council Speaker Veltar, the diplomatic Etherian who usually kept order, seemed too shocked to speak. Overlord Thexmore rose to its full height, nearly touching the ceiling of the Great Hall. You doom your entire species with this arrogance, it roared. We have crushed civilizations that were thousands of years old when your son was young. Colonel Kim Do-hyun stepped forward. Those civilizations fought alone. We don't intend to. The display changed again, showing communication logs from the past 30 days, messages between Earth and other worlds, secret meetings, shared technical data, plans for rebellion. For 3,000 years you have kept the galaxy in fear, Colonel Kim continued. Species bowed to you not because they respected you, but because they thought they had no choice. We have shown them they do have a choice. One of the alien beings in the crowd stood up. It was a Zephyrian, one of the golden-winged species that had been enslaved for centuries. The humans spoke to us, it said in a musical voice. They offered us weapons, ships, training, a chance to be free. Another being rose. This one was made of living rock, a survivor of the granite prime worlds. They shared their new technology freely. They asked for nothing in return except that we stand together. More and more aliens stood up around the hall, species that had paid tribute for hundreds or thousands of years, all of them now talking about freedom, about fighting back, about saying no. Overlord Thexmore's crystal body was flashing red so bright it hurt to look at. Silence. All of you! You forget what happens to those who defy us. We remember perfectly, said Ambassador Min-ji. You destroy them, but you've never faced a united galaxy before. The display showed ship construction figures from across the known worlds. The numbers were staggering. Billions of new ships being built in secret. Trillions of beings ready to fight. You want our tribute? Commander Taman asked, speaking for the first time. Here it is. The display changed one final time. It showed the location of Earth's new fleet. 200,000 ships were spread throughout the solar system, not hiding but arranged in battle formation. More ships were visible near other worlds. Zephyrian golden fighters, Etherian cloud ships, granite prime rock throwers, all of them waiting. We give you our tribute of defiance, Taman said. Our tribute of courage. Our tribute of hope for every species that has been forced to bow to you. Overlord Thexmore stood silent for a long moment. The red light in its crystal body pulsed like an angry heartbeat. You have made a grave mistake, humans. Our fleet number's in the millions. Your clever little alliance will crumble when they see what true power looks like. Maybe, said Colonel Kim, but at least we'll crumble standing up. The Vorthak Overlord turned to address the entire hall. Any species that joins this foolish rebellion will be destroyed along with the humans. You have 3 days to withdraw your support and return to your proper places. But no one sat down. No one backed away. The alien beings who had stood up remained standing, and more joined them. Even some species that Earth had not contacted were rising from their seats. Council Speaker Veltar finally found his voice. This session is, he looked around at the chaos in the hall. This session is historic. Ambassador Minji gathered her equipment and prepared to leave. We'll be waiting for you at Earth, she told the Vorthak Overlord. Come whenever you're ready. As the 3 humans walked out of the hall, they could hear the sound of dozens of alien species talking at once. Some were making plans to join the rebellion. Others were trying to decide what to do. A few were already leaving to prepare their own worlds for war. Captain Yujisu was waiting for them at their ship. She had been monitoring Earth's communications and knew what was happening at home. Every human world was preparing for battle. Every ship was being armed. Every person who could fight was getting ready. How do you think it went? She asked as they boarded Soul's Pride. Commander Taman looked back at the giant space station where the Galactic Council was still in chaos. I think we just started the biggest war in galactic history. Good, Captain Jisoo replied, taking her place at the ship's controls. It's about time. As Soul's Pride flew away from the station, heading back toward Earth, the 3 humans could see other ships leaving as well. Ships from dozens of different worlds all heading home to prepare for war. The galaxy had been united in fear for 3,000 years. Now it was about to be united in something else. Hope. And that made all the difference. The Vorthak War was about to begin, and for the first time in galactic history, the Vorthak would not be fighting helpless victims. They would be fighting an entire galaxy that had finally decided to say no. The Vorthak fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system like a storm cloud blotting out the stars. War Marshal Drek Von stood on the bridge of the massive flagship Dominator, looking at the displays that showed 2 million Vorthak ships spreading out in perfect formation. Each ship was a mountain of metal and crystal, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Show me the human fleet, Drek Von ordered. He was different from Overlord Thexmore, more like a soldier than a politician. His crystal body was darker with scars from ancient battles carved into its surface. The tactical display lit up with thousands of red dots scattered throughout the solar system. Human ships hiding behind asteroids lurking near the gas giant planets clustered around Earth's moon. The numbers made Drek Von's crystals flash with amusement. 200,000 ships, he said to his officers. They have built 200,000 toys to fight our battle-tested fleet. But something nagged at him as he studied the formation. The human ships were not where he expected them to be. Most species put their best ships in front of their homeworld, ready for a glorious last stand. The humans had spread their fleet out like they were planning something. Admiral Song Hyok sat on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, Incheon Revenge. The ship was ugly compared to Vorthak vessels, built for function rather than beauty. But every system had been designed with one purpose: killing Vorthak ships. Enemy fleet has stopped at the system edge, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Suman. They're scanning us. Let them scan, Admiral Song replied. They're about to learn something new. The first phase of humanity's battle plan was simple: make the enemy think they understood what they were facing. then prove them wrong. Captain Lim Tae-hyung commanded the destroyer Busan's Fury, one of 50 ships positioned near Pluto. His crew was young and nervous, but they had trained for this moment every day for the past month. All ships, "This is Busan's Fury," he broadcast to his squadron. "Remember, we're not trying to win the war in one battle. We're trying to make them pay for every light year they advance." The Vorthak fleet began to move forward, their massive ships traveling in the same formation they had used for 1,000 years. In the center, the heavy battleships that could destroy cities. On the flanks, the fast cruisers that hunted down fleeing enemies. Ahead of them all, the scouts that looked for traps and ambushes. What they found instead were asteroids. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been humanity's first surprise for the Vorthak. Engineer Kang Minho had spent 3 weeks hiding nuclear bombs inside space rocks, turning each one into a massive mine. When the Vorthak scouts entered the belt, the rocks began to explode. "First blood to humanity," Lieutenant Commander Bae Nari announced from her position in the Cyber Warfare Center deep inside Incheon Revenge. She was humanity's best computer expert, and she had been preparing for this day since the moment they decided to fight. The Vorthak had never fought an enemy that used cyber warfare. Their computer systems were advanced but ancient, designed to be secure against physical attack, but vulnerable to the kind of digital assault that humans had perfected in their early space wars. As Vorthak ships tried to navigate the exploding asteroid field, their navigation systems began to fail. Weapons refused to fire. Shields flickered on and off. Some ships found their engines pushing them in the wrong direction. War Marshal Drekfon watched his forward scouts spinning helplessly as their computers went crazy. "What is happening to our ships?" "Unknown, Marshal," his communication officer replied. "The ships report multiple system failures, but our engineers say their computers are being attacked somehow." "Attacked? By what?" Before anyone could answer, the second phase of humanity's plan began. Captain Yu Jisoo led her squadron out from behind Jupiter's moons, flying fast and low to avoid the Vorthak sensors. Her ships were the smallest in Earth's fleet, barely larger than fighters, but they carried the most dangerous weapon humanity had developed. "All ships, arm kinetic penetrators," she ordered. "Target the big ones." The kinetic penetrators were simple weapons. Chunks of dense metal accelerated to nearly the speed of light by magnetic launchers. They had no explosives, no fancy technology. They didn't need any. At those speeds, a piece of metal the size of a baseball could punch through a battleship's armor like paper. The Vorthak heavy ships were built to survive massive energy weapons and explosive missiles. They were not built to survive telephone poles traveling at 90% of light speed. Jisoo's squadron fired their weapons and immediately turned to run. Behind them, 40 Vorthak battleships found holes punched straight through their hulls. The ships didn't explode dramatically. They just stopped working. War Marshal Drekfon felt something he had not experienced in centuries: surprise. "Order all ships to increase speed," he commanded. "Get through this system quickly and destroy their homeworld." But as the Vorthak fleet pressed forward, they discovered that every step cost them ships. Human vessels appeared from behind planets and moons, fired their weapons and disappeared again. Mines exploded in the empty space between worlds. Computer viruses spread through the fleet, causing ships to crash into each other. The battle for Earth's solar system lasted 3 days. By the end, the Vorthak had lost over 300 ships, more than they had lost in the past 2 centuries combined. But they were still coming. Admiral Song watched the enemy fleet approach Earth from his command center on Luna Base. The moon's surface was covered with weapons platforms and missile launchers, all pointed at the approaching enemy. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported, "we're receiving signals from the outer colonies. The Zephyrians have engaged Vorthak forces in the Alpha Centauri system. The Etherians are fighting near their home worlds. The rebellion has begun across the galaxy." Song nodded grimly. This was the third phase of the plan. While the Vorthak were focused on Earth, their empire was under attack from a dozen different directions. For the first time in their history, they were fighting a war on multiple fronts. "Launch all fighters," Song ordered. "If they want Earth, they'll have to take it from us ship by ship." Wing Commander Park Seojin led the first wave of human fighters toward the approaching Vorthak fleet. His ship was fast and agile, designed for close combat. Behind him flew 10,000 other pilots, all of them volunteers who knew they probably would not survive the day. The space around Earth became a storm of light and metal. Vorthak energy beams lashed out at human ships, turning some to vapor in seconds, but for every human ship destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. And the humans were learning, adapting, finding new ways to hurt their enemies. When conventional weapons failed, human pilots began ramming their ships into Vorthak vessels. When shields proved too strong, they found weak points and concentrated their fire. When outnumbered, they used teamwork and clever tactics to even the odds. Captain Lim Taehyung's destroyer was badly damaged, its hull cracked and life support failing. But he could see a Vorthak command ship nearby, its massive bulk bristling with communication arrays. "All remaining crew to escape pods," he ordered. "This is my fight now." He turned Busan's Fury toward the enemy ship and pushed his engines to maximum power. The destroyer struck the command ship's bridge at full speed, taking both vessels out of the battle. Across the solar system, similar acts of courage were being repeated thousands of times. Humanity was losing the battle for Earth, but they were making the Vorthak pay a terrible price for their victory. War Marshal Drekvan stood among the wreckage of his command center. His crystal body cracked from the impacts his flagship had taken. Around him, his officers struggled to maintain control of a battle that had gone completely wrong. "Marshal," his communication officer called out, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Rebellion on 47 worlds. Our tribute fleets are under attack. 3 sector capitals have fallen to rebel forces." Drekvan looked at the tactical display showing the battle for Earth. His fleet was winning, but barely. They had lost over 1,000 ships and the humans were still fighting. Worse, news of the battle was spreading across the galaxy, inspiring other species to rebel. "Send a message to Overlord Thexmore," he ordered. "Tell him that destroying humanity will not be enough. We are facing a galactic revolution." As the battle raged around Earth, signals were already racing across space to every corner of the galaxy. The humans were losing, but they were not surrendering. They were fighting with a courage that other species had forgotten was possible, and that courage was contagious. On worlds that had been slaves for centuries, beings were looking up at the stars and remembering what freedom felt like. The Vorthak Empire, built on fear and submission, was about to face its greatest test. The war for Earth was just the beginning. 6 months after the first battle, the galaxy looked very different. Admiral Song Hyuk stood on the bridge of the captured Vorthak flagship, now renamed Liberation. The massive ship had been turned into a symbol of the rebellion that was spreading across known space. Through the viewports, he could see the remains of the Vorthak fleet floating in space around Earth. Some ships were being repaired and given to rebel forces. Others were being studied by human engineers who wanted to understand their technology. A few were being turned into monuments to remember the cost of freedom. War Marshal Drekvan sat in a detention cell in the ship's lower levels. The once proud Vorthak warrior's crystal body was dim and cracked. He would face trial for the crimes his people had committed across the galaxy, but first he had to watch his empire crumble. The war had not ended with the battle for Earth. That had just been the beginning. News of humanity's resistance had spread faster than Vorthak ships could travel. On world after world, species that had been slaves for centuries rose up against their masters. Captain Yu Jisu now commanded a mixed fleet of human and alien ships patrolling the former Vorthak territory. Her crew included Zephyrians with their golden wings, Etherians who could float through walls, and rock beings from Granite Prime. They worked together better than anyone had expected. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a message from New Sol. The conference is ready to begin." New Sol was humanity's newest colony world, built specifically to serve as a neutral meeting place for all the species of the galaxy. The planet had no military bases, no weapons platforms, just cities designed for diplomacy and cooperation. The Great Assembly Hall on New Sol was very different from the old Galactic Council chamber. Instead of towering seats that made some species look more important than others, every delegate sat at the same level. The walls were made of clear crystal that showed the peaceful countryside outside, instead of the cold emptiness of space. Ambassador Park Minji walked to the center of the hall. She looked older now, with gray streaks in her hair from the stress of 6 months of war. But her voice was strong as she addressed the gathered representatives. 6 months ago, this galaxy was ruled by fear, she began. Species paid tribute not because they wanted to, but because they thought they had no choice. Today we gather as free beings to build something better. President Im Yeji of Earth sat with the other planetary leaders. She was young for a president, chosen because the war had shown that humanity needed fresh ideas and new energy. Around her sat leaders from dozens of worlds that had never been allowed to govern themselves before. The Terran doctrine is simple, President Im said when her turn came to speak. No species should bow to another. No civilization should live in fear. No being should be forced to give up their freedom for someone else's power. Dr. Nam Soo-young presented the first gift of the new alliance. Her research teams had been studying Vorthak technology and sharing what they learned freely with all species. Advanced energy systems faster than light communication, medical techniques that could extend life for centuries. All of it was being given away instead of hoarded. Knowledge belongs to everyone, Dr. Nam explained. When we share what we know, we all become stronger. Engineer Kang Minho had spent the months since the war traveling to different worlds, helping them rebuild their industries and develop new technologies. His teams were teaching species how to build their own ships, design their own weapons, and defend their own homes. The best defense is not having a big army, he told the assembly. The best defense is making sure everyone can defend themselves. But the most important speaker was Council Speaker Veltar, the Etherian diplomat who had watched the old Galactic Council for centuries. He floated above the floor, his translucent body shimmering with emotion. I have seen many changes in my long life, he said. I have watched species rise and fall. I have seen empires built on conquest and fear, but I have never seen anything like what humanity has created here. He gestured to the mixed crowds of beings working together throughout the hall, humans translating for species that had never met before. Zephyrians teaching their music to rock beings who had never heard sounds like that. Children from a dozen worlds playing together in the gardens outside. This is not just an alliance, Veltar continued. This is a new way of thinking about what civilization can be. The formal ceremonies took 3 days, but the real work had been going on for months. The Galactic Defense Fleet was being built by volunteers from every member species, designed not for conquest but for protection. Instead of one species dominating others, multiple species were learning to work as equals. Commander Lee Taman, now promoted to admiral, oversaw the construction of the new fleet from orbital shipyards around New Sol. The ships being built were different from both human and Vorthak designs. They incorporated the best ideas from every species, creating vessels that were more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen before. How many ships do we have now? He asked his aide, Lieutenant Jin Minjae, a young officer who had distinguished himself during the war. Over 500,000, sir, Jin replied, and more being completed every day. The Zephyrians are contributing their fast scouts. The Etherians are building hospital ships. Even the former Vorthak colonies are sending mining vessels and transports. But the real measure of success was not the number of ships. It was the number of species that were learning to trust each other. The galaxy had been divided by fear for so long that many beings had forgotten how to cooperate. Now they were rediscovering what they could accomplish together. Captain Lim Taehyung had survived the ramming of his destroyer, rescued by a Granite Prime rescue ship whose crew had never seen a human before. Now he commanded a new ship with a mixed crew, patrolling the borders of the Alliance to watch for any remaining Vorthak forces. Most of the Vorthak had surrendered after their empire collapsed, but a few groups were still fighting. They could not understand how their ancient empire had fallen to a species they had never heard of just months before. The answer was simple, but hard for them to accept. Humanity had not defeated the Vorthak through superior technology or greater numbers. They had won by giving other species something the Vorthak never had: hope. Wing Commander Park Seojin now led a training program that taught pilots from different species how to fly together. It was harder than it sounded, since different species thought differently and reacted to danger in different ways. But the results were remarkable when it worked. The key, he explained to a group of new pilots, is not trying to make everyone the same. It's learning to use everyone's differences as strengths. Lieutenant Commander Bay Nari had become the galaxy's expert on cybersecurity, traveling from world to world to help species protect their computer systems. The Vorthak had never used cyber warfare, so most species had no defenses against it. Now they were learning to protect themselves from future threats. But perhaps the most important change was happening in the classrooms and playgrounds of hundreds of worlds. Children who had grown up fearing the Vorthak were learning that the galaxy could be a place of cooperation instead of conquest. On New Sol, a young Vorthak child named Thexlin played with human children in one of the city gardens. She was part of the first generation of Vorthak, born free from their empire's rigid caste system. Her crystal body sparkled with colors that had been forbidden under the old regime. Captain Yujisu watched the children playing from a bench nearby. She had been promoted to Admiral of the Outer Patrol, responsible for exploring the parts of the galaxy that had been closed off during the Vorthak rule. There were entire regions where species had been hiding for centuries, afraid to make contact with anyone. "It's going to take generations," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Dr. Nam Soo-young sitting down beside her. The xenologist looked tired but happy as she watched the mixed group of children. "What is?" Jisoo asked. "Building trust. Learning to work together. Forgetting the fear." Dr. Nam smiled as a human girl helped a young Etherian boy who had fallen down. "But we're making a good start." The sun set over New Sol, painting the sky in colors that reminded everyone of peace rather than war. In the distance, construction crews from a dozen species were working together to build new cities. Above them, ships from the Galactic Defense Fleet patrolled peacefully, protecting freedom instead of enforcing tribute. 6 months ago, humanity had faced a choice between slavery and death. Instead, they had chosen a third option, to fight for something better. Not just for themselves, but for every species in the galaxy that had forgotten what freedom looked like. The age of tribute was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and it had started with 3 simple words that no species had dared to say to the Vorthak in 3,000 years. "Come and take it." But now the galaxy was saying something different, something that would have been impossible under the old system, something that gave hope to every being who heard it. "We stand together." And that made all the difference in the universe.